This week on the Brody File, the sleeping giant has awoken. Move over, Godzilla. Evangelicals have risen.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs.
It's one of the most important moments in America's religious liberty history. The city of Houston demands pastors to hand over their sermons. We're one-on-one with Ted Cruz.
I never imagined we would see this kind of hostility to faith here in Houston.
Pastors rise up and fight back against the mayor as they head to the post office, armed with biblical love.
Well, here goes the Bible to Mayor Parker. Pray that she receives it well.
Plus, the hecklers are out in force. Sorry, Mr. President.
We believe that in America,
Looks like a sign of trouble to come for Democrats in the midterms. Oiga, vote for them. The Brody File, raring to go. We're on the air across America, and we're next. And welcome everybody to the Brody File. We are glad you're with us. We begin with a very serious subject. No, it is not about the Brody File weight gain. That is a separate counseling session. It's rooted somewhere in my childhood. Folks, we are actually talking about religious liberty. It is under attack down in Houston, Texas. The Brody File on the ground in Houston, Texas, not literally, by the way, where pastors there are fighting back against an attempt by the mayor to silence them from the pulpit. Some have been told to provide the government with their sermons, and now they're getting a little help from one of the top conservative voices in the country. Have a look. The Lone Star State slogan, "Don't mess with Texas," could now be expanded to "Don't mess with Texas pastors."
Senator Cruz, please come share with us about this.
Thursday in Houston, Senator Ted Cruz came to his home church to give city officials a lesson on religious liberty.
The city of Houston has no power, no legal authority to silence the church.
The controversy began over a city ordinance that not only bans discrimination against LGBT people, it also allows them to choose which bathroom they want to use. That's when pastors here said, enough.
There's no such thing as anti-gay in the course of this and all, but we are for God's standard of morality.
Citizens signed petitions to overturn the ordinance and gathered enough to force a vote, but the Houston City Council declared the signatures invalid. The Christian advocates behind the petition sued. In an attempt to fight back, the city demanded to see sermons, text, emails, or any correspondence whatsoever from pastors against the ordinance. That would have included any preaching about homosexuality or gender identity. Pastors said, no way. In an exclusive interview with CBN News, Cruz says he hopes Christians take notice of what's happening here. Is this a situation where a sleeping giant has awoke? What is your sense here?
You know, I think it may well be, and I certainly hope that it is. I never imagined we would see this kind of hostility to faith here in Houston.
Neither can Pastor Khan, who came to America from Vietnam to get away from persecution. Now his name is on the government hit list.
This is what's going on, that they censor all the sermon. Pastors have to submit our worship service program, and they have to approve it before we can conduct our service. That's why I run away from Vietnam.
While Senator Cruz and the pastors came to the church with their take, city officials have a much different take. They are trying to downplay the fact that this is an attack on religious liberty. Houston's gay mayor is pushing the LGBT ordinance. She says her pastoral critics don't understand the concept of unconditional love, and she's downplaying the controversy too.
People are rightly concerned if a government entity tries to in any way inhibit religious speech. That is not the intent.
The city now says it will narrow the subpoenas and not require all the information it originally wanted. Pastors here aren't buying it.
The mayor and the city attorney, they did this. This is not an accident. This is not some pro bono attorney who did it and they didn't know. This was their plan all along. They just thought no one would stand up and say anything.
And they were wrong. Cruz says pastors must lead the way or the future may look even worse.
And so the specter of government trying to determine if what pastors preach from the pulpit meets with the policy views or political correctness of the governing authorities, that prospect is real and it's happening now.
In Houston, though, pastors are ready for the fight, whatever the cost. Folks, this is serious stuff. The question really is, will evangelicals truly understand how serious this is? Former presidential candidate Mike Huckabee says it's so serious that he wants to try something unique. He wants every pastor in the country to send a Bible and copies of all of their sermons to the Houston mayor. The Brody File actually has some iPhone video of one pastor down in South Carolina that is sending his out to the mayor. Have a look.
Here goes a Bible to Mayor Parker. Pray that she receives it well and listens to the message in the CD about the biblical definition of marriage. So, there you go. God bless you, Mayor Parker. Praying for you.
I love it. I love it. I mean, it's like the Christian Blair Witch Project video. That's pretty cool. All right, pastors, keep those Bibles coming, because one guy who would definitely agree with all of this is Senator Ted Cruz. You heard from him earlier. Here he is, though, uncut, uncensored, talking about pastors' responsibility in this fight and the real risk of pastors being jailed in the future for preaching out against homosexuality. One of the next battles in this culture war could indeed be right there in the pulpit as it relates to, I mean, are we going through a potential period, or could we very well soon go through a period where pastors are in essence hauled off to jail or whatever it is for a hate crime because they're speaking for traditional marriage?
Well, I think that is a real risk, and you and I have both pointed to that risk in the past, and some in the media ridicule that threat and say there's no danger of government coming after pastors. I mean, that is the usual response. In this instance, the subpoena from the city of Houston asked these 5 pastors, who are not parties to a lawsuit, mind you, they're simply pastors in the city of Houston, to turn over every sermon they have ever preached that mentions in any way homosexuality. And so the specter of government trying to determine if what pastors preach from the pulpit meets with the policy views or political correctness of the governing authorities, that prospect is real and it's happening now. And I have to say, you know, this gathering we had this morning, this unity rally, was uplifting. We saw upwards of 50 pastors from all throughout Houston, different denominations, people who may not see eye to eye on every question of faith, people of different races, people of different socioeconomic backgrounds, all coming together united. Because as we said at that conference, when you subpoena one pastor, you subpoena every pastor. If government has the power to force the pulpit to knuckle under, if government has the power to insist that pastors hand over their sermons to government for government approval, then we've lost the very first freedom that begins our Bill of Rights. We've lost the freedom that this country was built on.
This Ted Cruz interview, along with the big pastor event in Houston that he conducted, made me think more about Ted Cruz and the gospel. And it's the subject of this week's Brody File commentary. You know, the Brody File wants to show you some pictures, a little show and tell. Here we go. Here's Ted Cruz at that event in Houston with the pastors. You know, as Cruz was speaking, the Brody File realized he was in his element, because what he has is not a political skill, nor is it an intellectual one. When it comes to his relationship with evangelicals, he actually has a spiritual connection. He is one of them. He gets them and they get him. And one thing's for certain, he is not ashamed of the gospel. Far from it. Cruz wears his faith on his sleeve, and he's proud of it. This press conference was heartfelt. I mean, this was no political stunt. Look, folks, his father has been a traveling preacher for years. Cruz is well-versed in the Bible. It is at the core of who he is. You know, in my many interviews with him over the years, he loves to talk about Jesus. But look, hey, I didn't fall off the turnip truck yesterday. I do know when politicians are bringing up faith for political reasons. Cruz does not do that at all. All right, moving on. Well, have you guys seen this? I mean, leave it to the New York Post. Here it is, the headline, Toxic President. Now, obviously, the president has come down, he hasn't come down with Ebola or anything, or any sort of infectious disease. The question is this, is President Obama toxic? Some Democrats seem to think so. Most liberals have steered clear of the president during the midterm election campaign, but not this guy. This is Maryland gubernatorial candidate Anthony Brown. He held a rally last week and he brought the president along to fire up the crowd. But things didn't turn out as expected. Take a look.
We believe that in America, we believe that
Now, that was followed up by a mass exodus of people on the front row. Now some are saying that the people who actually left were supporters of the president who were simply part of the event's overflow and that Marylanders love the president. Still, it does not explain those hecklers at all. All right, when we come back, with the former House Majority Leader Eric Cantor gone, we take a look at the race to replace him. Jennifer Wishon breaking down that next in the B Block. And welcome back to the Brody File. Well, it is midterm election time. There are a lot of interesting happenings in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It used to be a solid red conservative state. Then it started turning Democrat blue to the point where it feels kind of purple right now. So to sort it all out, break it down, all that, the big race is to replace House Majority Leader Eric Cantor in the Old Dominion. It's time for our Jenny fix, a.k.a. Jennifer Wishon, or a.k.a. Jenny in the B Block.
You go, girl! The 7,000 people who live in Ashland, Virginia, affectionately refer to their town's 7 square miles as the center of the universe. And now,
hope you'll vote for me November 4th.
They're proclaiming Ashland the center of the political universe.
I want to curb Congress's endless spending addiction. And
Dave Bratt rocked Washington by knocking Eric Cantor off his perch as House Majority Leader in the primary. He's a professor at Randolph-Macon, a private college nestled in the center of town. November 4th, he'll face Jack Trammell, a Democrat and also a professor at Randolph-Macon.
I'm the sociologist. Dave, when he gets here, he's the economics guy.
He thought he'd be running against Eric Cantor, and then he turns out running against his colleague.
Well, Jack's a nice guy. He works in the disability services wing at the school, does a good job for the kids over there, and he's worked in my classes to help my students.
I characterize us as casual friends. We would have debates in the locker room or in the lunchroom about various things.
The college is named for John Randolph and Nathaniel Macon, congressmen who served more than 200 years ago. Today, administrators couldn't have planned a better lesson for students who are getting an intimate look as their professors battle it out over ideas.
They're both wonderful members of our community, and that's what characterizes both of them.
Since the men got into the race, College Provost Bill Franz says school pride is registering a little higher.
I sense it among our students. They walk a little taller. They're happy to proclaim where they are.
All of a sudden, the college of 1,300 students is part of the national conversation.
A lot of people are really excited for it. Lots of people come in and buy the t-shirts, and they're all really excited to wear them.
It's also a bumper year for college Democrat and Republican clubs.
The cool factor has definitely risen a little bit if you're associated with one of the clubs.
Trammell says it was his students who convinced him to run.
I require my students at Randolph-Macon to complete service learning, and they turned that around on me and said, when is your service learning project going to start?
He's selling himself as a candidate determined to remove compromise from the list of dirty words on Capitol Hill.
Part of what I intend to do is to demonstrate bipartisanship and an ability to work with people who don't think like I do, but we need to be able to get together and solve problems.
Both candidates are men of faith. Trammell teaches Sunday school at his Disciples of Christ Church. Bratt is a committed Catholic. They're both academics, but by all accounts, very different. Bratt is an economist who also studied theology, giving him unique credibility when he talks about restoring morality in the budget.
The federal government in particular is just kind of out of control. You just look at Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, our entitlement programs are insolvent or bankrupt. by the 2030.
Virginia's 7th is a red congressional district that clearly preferred Romney over Obama in 2012. But both candidates have an edge in that voters have already demonstrated they want a fresh face.
Everybody needs to wake up, not just Democrats. Republicans too need to wake up.
Both men vow to keep their campaigns positive. Voters have heard that before. But in this race, there's a special audience to consider: students.
We really want to see them exemplify the best of Macon and how they are turning, everyday kids into the leaders of tomorrow.
I just know that whoever wins, it's going to be great for Randolph-Macon.
Come election night, a professor from Randolph-Macon College will be elected to Congress, and political science majors will have a major connection on Capitol Hill.
For one fall, we're not donkeys and we're not elephants, we're yellow jackets.
All right, thanks, Jenny. When we come back, a pizza delivery man receives the gift of a lifetime. Back in a moment. Welcome back, everybody. Well, we talk about food a lot here at the Brody File. It's our topic of choice, and we can't help that. Anyway, a Christian college in Indiana gave the local pizza delivery man the tip that he will not soon forget. James Gilpin made a delivery to the Indiana Wesleyan University Chapel service. Now, the total cost of the delivery was $12.50. So get this, he walks away with a tip for $1,200. That's right, we did the math. That's a lot more than 20%. Apparently, the students chipped in to give Gilpin the gracious gift. He also received $70 in gift cards and thousands of handwritten inspirational notes from the students. He says he will use the cash to purchase Christmas gifts for his children. He also says it couldn't have come at a better time. All right, coming next, what you don't know about Ebola. A doctor dishes the real truth. We come back. And we're back here on the Brody File Show. All right, time for some serious stuff. I mean, this segment is a no-joke zone because we are talking Ebola. The latest comes from the Pentagon, where they are putting together a 30-person rapid response team that will be helping to fight Ebola. I mean, basically, this is going to be an expert medical team to be deployed at a moment's notice if we get more cases of Ebola in the United States. All right, so folks, let's have a frank discussion. I mean, how concerned should we be about Ebola in the United States? I mean, we've had school districts closed down over the disease in Texas and Ohio. We've got people not shaking hands at some church services in the country. And all of this despite just 3 confirmed cases in the U.S. Still, almost 9,000 people have been affected with the disease worldwide. Half of them have died. So clearly, this is a big deal. The problem here is that a little panic leads to a lot of panic. And it's one thing to be cautious here. It's one thing to be that and smart. It's another thing for mind games to start setting in. But then, of course, you hear things like this. According to a doctor specializing in infectious diseases, the tests used to screen for Ebola may have a major flaw, actually. CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson has that story.
Dr. Nancy Cardori has been studying and treating infectious diseases for the last 30 years. She says one of the main concerns with Ebola is the test. Even if a person is infected with Ebola, the test will be negative until enough of the virus builds up inside the person.
The test becomes positive when they have symptoms. So it doesn't help you before the symptoms, like many other tests do.
That means people infected with Ebola can enter this country undetected. What happens after that is up to them, but precautions can be taken at the point of entry.
People who are coming from Africa, I'm hoping that this education will happen at the entry level, like at the airports, customs checks and all. Say, look, you're coming from XYZ country, and therefore, if you have fever or you just don't feel well, you have a headache, please don't just take your time to go see a healthcare provider. Go quickly.
In an effort to prevent Ebola from spreading in the United States, the CDC has issued a number of guidelines for hospitals across the country. Topping the list, zeroing in on patients who have been to West Africa.
Experts say these patients should be kept and isolated even if they have symptoms as mild as a low-grade fever. Although Ebola is only spread through direct contact with body fluids, it takes just a drop, splashing into the eyes, nose, even a tiny cut.
If people have a small tear or abrasion that they haven't even noticed, which happens all the time, and they come in contact with somebody's blood or somebody's stool or urine or vomit that has the virus in it, in that case the virus will go through the skin.
Dr. Cardori says the best hope for containing the spread of Ebola is the vaccine currently in development, which could be given on a mass scale in as early as 6 months.
Because of the technology we have now, that is quite possible, considering and hoping there'll be no hurdles in the process that we don't know of yet.
Dr. Cardori says until Ebola is contained in Africa, it will continue to spread around the world.
Thanks, Lori. All right, back in a moment with a spelling test that fails miserably. It's our Oy Vey moment of the week. And welcome back to the Brody File. Well, folks, look, we know here at the Brody File, you know how we love a good bagel, right? I mean, it's our Jewish roots. So you can imagine how horrified we were when we saw something that made us think, this is definitely Oy Vey moment of the week. All right, so I'm in New York City the other weekend. I look up to see the following sign. Here it is. Coffee and bagel? I don't know. Croissant, muffin, $3.99 plus tax. Folks, could you Google how to spell bagel? I mean, it's B-A-G-E-L. Come on, it's not too hard. I mean, I speak for all Jewish people around this world by saying, please spell it right. Oy Gevolt. Speaking of spelling errors, here are a few others the Brody File found amusing. How about at Centennial Elementary School with this sign? Congratulations, spelling bee winners. Or this one at another elementary school, Literacy Night. I like the caption underneath the school sign, by the way. It says, where children and learning come first. And then there is Prescott High School, where they greet students with this sign, welcome back. Hope you had a good break. Oy Gevolt, it's all of that. That does it for us. Until next time, everybody. God bless and have a great week.
If you want to understand the war on terror, you must first understand the Muslim Brotherhood. Pick up my new book, The Brotherhood, America's Next Great Enemy. Available at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold from coast to coast.